Hello everyone. Today we're flying the brand new Su-30 module against a collection of Western aircraft, the F-15, the F16, and the F-18. And I decided to use the Persian Gulf map. I haven't flown on this map in a long time. Um, so we're taking off from Dubai. And we're going to do a series of engagements, guns only, against the three Western fighters and see how this module behaves. So overall, you know, I like this module. I think it shows great promise, um, but it feels somewhat undercooked. Um, I'll explain what I mean as we go along, but let me say a couple of things about the good sides first. I mean, the external modeling is just superb. It's a beautifully done aircraft. The internal cockpit is also very nicely done. Could use a little more weathering, but overall, it's really nice. The system modeling is not quite there yet, but this is understandable because, frankly, I have no idea how they even got information on the system that they did model, because all this is highly classified, of course. My biggest issue is with the flight model. I mean, you just saw, so here's the first engagement against the F-18. My biggest problem is with the flight model. You just saw the takeoff, and almost on cue, the nose pitched up at about 120, I think. And it's the simple flight model, the SFM. I can almost read this as a software developer. I can almost read their code just by looking at the plane's behavior. When the airspeed reaches a certain value, then play the animation that raises the nose. It somehow doesn't, it doesn't use forces. It doesn't feel as, how do I say this, heavy like some of the other planes that use the EFM. But of course, this is all work in progress. They already said that this is, the second release, and by the third release, by version 3.0, everything should be in place, including the EFM. So for now, it's a lot of fun to kind of throw this thing around, but just don't expect the same kind of realism that you would from some of the other modules that are available out there. That said, it is a fairly competitive plane. It's kind of fun to fly against the aircraft, and it does model some systems which are not really available in other aircraft. So, including weapon systems like the R7-SM, which the old Su-27 or the S-33 did not have. That said, this is about guns-only engagement. And in a guns-only engagement, there are two modes you can fly. You can fly with the thrust vectoring off, or you can turn the thrust vectoring on. Now, I was a little surprised because apparently the thrust vectoring basically enables the behavior that in the old Su-27 used to simply shut down the automatic control system, flight control system. I'm not sure if that's what they're doing, but it sure feels like it. But a little more on that a little bit later. For now, we just looked. I made a mistake. This is actually the first engagement is against the F16. So, as you can see, we're not using thrust vectoring, and we easily managed to get behind this guy. And quick burst, and that F16 is going down. So that's the first round. So. Overall, I mean, if you were paying attention, you noticed that I went in a two-circle fight with an F-16, and that's usually not a good idea. Now, admittedly, this is the AI, but it's the AI set to veteran level, and we're both starting at 75% fuel. So the F-16 should have been able to outturn me, but they did not. And I'm not using thrust vectoring at all here. So I don't know if this is a failing of the AI or the flight model on the Su-30, but it's kind of strange. So once again, I turn to the left, and I find myself in a two-circle fight with the F16. This is round 2. So notice that, I mean, he is pulling a little bit ahead because I wasted quite a bit of energy on the initial turn, but I can easily make that up. I throw some rudder and he starts to go down. I'm gonna follow him, pick up some speed, and once my speed is up to about 560, 600 kilometers an hour, I can easily stay behind him and even outrate him. I have no idea how realistic that is. I mean, in a modern aircraft like the Su-30 compared to an aging F-16, maybe this is possible, but I wouldn't put much stock in it in terms of realism. It's still fun though. You just have to learn what you can expect from your aircraft and from your enemies if you're going to be competitive in an online environment playing against other players. But as you can see, the AI decided to go down and gave me an opening, so once again he picked up speed and he starts playing his vertical games, and that's pretty much the end of the story. You know, I'm now behind him and I can easily turn with him. So I'm gonna get a little closer. I kind of lost sight of him momentarily here, just trying to pull lead. So I'm gonna fly lag pursuit until he starts going up, and then I'm gonna see if I can pull lead again and take him out. So there you go. We're doing about 520 kilometers an hour, and we're comfortably staying behind him. And again, a quick burst, and down goes the F-16 in flames. So again, I wouldn't put much realism. I wouldn't say this is realistic in any way. But it's still fun to fly around, and I'm definitely anxious to see what the EFM model is going to look like for this plane, including the thrust vectoring. Now, speaking of the thrust vectoring, here's the beginning of the F-15 engagement. So an F-15 should really, you know, outturn me in a one-circle fight. So let's test that. So I'm going one circle with the F-15, and I'm expecting that he's going to outturn me. But for whatever reason, that F-15 decided to turn the other way. So now we're in a two-circle fight. He was starting to turn one way, and then he reversed his turn. So we're in a two-circle fight, which suits me fine. I can probably pull some lead on him here and see if I can take a shot. No, not quite. But I'm gonna kick the rudder over and stay behind him. And the AI stupidly presents me with an awesome opportunity to get on his tail. I guess he dives down to pick up speeds, but now that gives me an opening, and it's game over for this F-16 driver. Still not quite used to how she behaves. She dances around a little bit. There we go. Oh, he's still flying, so let's see if we can finish him off. I think he's out of the game. I don't think he's going to be a danger to us at this point. But what I was saying about the thrust vectoring in this aircraft is, thrust vectoring is kind of weird. I've tried it on a couple of times, but it feels less like thrust vectoring and more like you know, the disabling of the automatic flight control system, like, you know, the S button in the old Su-30-SM, the one that allows you to do all the cover maneuvers and all that stuff. So by comparison, you know, the Su-57 module by Cubanese has thrust vectoring, and that feels like thrust vectoring at any speed. You know, the plane, you know, pivots around almost on its axis. It's just super maneuverable, and it doesn't really lose that much energy in hard maneuvering. Whereas in this case, once the so-called thrust vectoring is turned on, it really takes 3 seconds flat to go from 600 knots to 600 kilometers an hour to like 250 just above stall, and then the stall siren starts blaring. And the weird thing is, once you're in a stall, with the thrust vectoring enabled, you really can get out of it. I mean, you can, but you have to be really, really, really gentle on the stick. Just basically, just barely breathe on the stick and recover some airspeed. Usually, if you pull any kind of G's at all while in thrust vectoring mode, you're basically stuck at about 250 kilometers an hour, just above stall speed. It does give you an opportunity to turn, but at times, you end up in a stall which is difficult to recover from. So it's a blessing and a curse. I really don't consider it thrust vectoring, so I pretty much don't use it. I've tried it a couple of times. Not my thing. I look forward to when they fix the flight model. Hopefully they'll fix the thrust vectoring on this plane, and that will be awesome to try. Um, so once again, we're fighting the F15, and he's pulling some angles on us, but as long as you control your airspeeds, the Su-30 turns pretty well, you know, especially in the vertical, as should be expected. So we're slowly gaining on him. He wants to play the vertical game, but that's my game too. So as long as I control my airspeed, as long as I don't overspeed, keep my airspeeds from experience, from what I've seen, around 550 to 650 kilometers per hour. That's my optimal speed, I think, for turning. So with that, I can get behind this guy, and I wish I could aim better, but other than that, I can stay behind him now all day. It's not a big deal. But we're gonna finish this off pretty quickly. So it's probably gonna go up now, as the often does. And we're gonna use that opportunity to finish him off. Of course, he goes into the sun, so I have no idea where he's going. There you go. We took off both wings for F15 driver. The other thing I was going to mention is the reflections. The cockpit reflections are a little bit overdone, and especially when you're flying over the sea or the ocean, it's really hard to see. What's a cloud, what's up, what's down, what's the sea, and what's the sky, and it can become very disorienting at times. And so you need to keep an eye on your instruments in order to figure out what's up and what's down. I wish it took down the reflections a little bit, because it does get distracting, but I have no idea how realistic it is. Obviously, I've never been a jet fighter, let alone an Su-30, so maybe this is how it is in real life. So, but I just wish that the cockpit reflections were a little bit toned down. So this final engagement is against an F-15, sorry, an F-18, and the F-18 has a very good nose authority, so he should be able to turn inside of me. But as you saw, he went down, picked up speed, and didn't quite get his nose on me, so I managed to take him out on the very first pass. So I consider this sort of an unfair pass. I took him out. Well, maybe not. As they say, always fair in love and war. But it was a quick victory, so we'll fly one more engagement against the F-18, and I expect the F-18 to do better in a one-circle fight. The other thing I expect is that, having flown the F-18 quite a bit, I know that it tends to lose airspeed, and it's difficult to recover once you do lose it. So I'm just going to drag him down to the deck, or play the vertical game, and after a couple of turns, I expect him to sort of lose his energy, and then he should be mine, as long as I can stay out of his nose for a while. So here we are, and I think we are in a rolling scissors now. So he's pulling up and trying to play the using rudder and stay behind him. We're doing the rolling scissors, and that's a game that the two of us can play. It's the Su-30 is quite capable of doing this. As you can see, I'm managing to stay behind, and I'm closing the distance a little bit. It's a little hard to pull up, but let's see if he goes for one more. Yeah, and now we're in a good position to behind him. So with this, we can get behind him, and the weird thing about this F18 is it flies as if it has thrust vectoring. I mean, it takes a heartbeat for it to turn around, and but once you're behind him, it's fairly easy to achieve a kill. So it's the Su30 is a brand new mod. It's much more than what I expected. It's again, the external model is just superb. It's really beautiful to look at. The cockpit model is really nicely done. The system modeling, I have no idea how accurate it is, but it's very useful and playable. I look forward to trying this in a multiplayer on a multiplayer server. But for now, I'm just enjoying it for what it is. It promises to be a truly outstanding module once the EFM is implemented, including thrust vectoring. For now, it does have its limitations, but if you ignore some of these quirks and weaknesses, it's really fun to fly, and it's great addition to the DCS family of airplanes. I very much look forward to trying this online and see how I can stack up against other players in different airframes, or indeed in another Su30. A lot of players play, they tend to pit one aircraft against the other. I've hardly seen anybody fly, two people flying the same aircraft against each other. That's just a test of pilot skill, and I kind of want to see that more than flying one plane, exploiting the weaknesses and advantages of one plane against the other. That's important, of course, but it's not a true test of pilot skills. At any rate, we're lining up here for a short runway, final at one of the runways in Dubai, and once again, it just doesn't really feel heavy. I mean, it's a weird feeling. It's fun. It's nice, and especially in external views, look at how beautiful that thing is. But look at this. The nose wheel stays up and up and up and up, and then once you get down to about 120, the code just says, okay, now it's time to play the animation that drops the nose in.